My name is David Bessex. My wife, Anne, and I were originally co-workers. Now, by her own desire, she chose to leave the company and is now a stay-at-home mom. But until then, she was known as the accounting department's most dedicated and earnest worker. She was a diligent and serious woman with strong work ethic. I fell in love with her for being such an exacting, but earnest and hardworking person. After working and getting used to our workplace for a year, I asked her out. I remember that Anne nodded her head shyly, and she agreed to date me. After 2 years, I proposed to Anne. Anne cried tears of happiness. She's an amazing cook and likes being organized. I felt that she was the perfect bride. At the time, my new employee trainer, my current boss, Tom, also congratulated me at my wedding by saying, "Our company's own power couple." Although it made me feel bashful, it was a nice compliment. Although we don't have any children, in both the personal and professional realms, we were both leading a very fulfilling life. But that too vanished with those words from Anne. "I want a divorce because I'm pregnant." I never thought that I would hear those words from her. I was speechless with shock. I lowered myself onto a chair and repeated the words that Anne had just said in my head. What are you talking about? Whose? I couldn't remember the last time that Anne and I had been intimate, maybe about 6 months ago. "I'm not feeling well." So we haven't been physically romantic at all recently. I felt a cold sweat run down my back. No way. Anne would never do such a thing. I want to trust Anne. I looked up at her with desperation. Anne sighed in resignation. "Don't worry, you will eventually find out. I'm going to go ahead and head to bed. Don't come in the bedroom." She didn't even bother looking at me. She grabbed her phone and went into the bedroom. I didn't know what was going on. As I listened to my heart beat faster and faster, everything around me faded to black. When I woke up, I was at the kitchen table. My body hurt all over. I didn't change out of my suit after I came home last night. My suit was all wrinkled. I saw that the bedroom door was slightly ajar. I looked inside, but Anne wasn't in there. It's Sunday today. She must have gone to her lover's place. If she stays true to the pattern, she would have taken what she needed to his house. I remember reading a long time ago a post by someone who was cheated on. You know, the ones that are often found in blog summaries. I opened the drawer where our valuables were. My bank seal and bank book were in there, but the contents of the account had been all withdrawn. Fortunately, this account is only for withdrawals for utilities and other living expenses, and the savings is done through an online bank account, so Anne doesn't have access to it either. I checked just in case, and I confirmed that no money was withdrawn from the online bank account. To be honest, I never thought that what I read in the blog article would be useful in this way. I slumped my shoulders in disbelief, and I sat down on the sofa. I couldn't believe that I would be cheated on. Leaning back, I closed my eyes. Until yesterday, we used to do normal things, like cooking, and I can easily picture her sitting next to me while watching TV. Anne must have fallen for her lover. There's no way for me to get her back. Even if I could get her back, it wouldn't change the fact that she betrayed me. We wouldn't be able to go back to the lives we had before, and that means there is only one option. I decided to look for a lawyer with my phone, which was about to die. The next day, Aya still did not return. I left for work with a heavy heart. In front of the planning and sales department office, where I had been assigned for 5 years, my section chief, Tom, was standing there. He would normally be at his own desk drinking coffee while checking his email. Why is he standing here? As I wondered about this. "Good morning," I greeted him. He smirked at me. "Morning," he returned my greeting. "What's going on?" Up until now, he has never made eye contact and greeted me. I wondered why he is greeting me now. I started to feel uncomfortable as I started to walk into the office. As we passed each other, he said, "Did Anne tell you?" He said it suddenly, and I had no idea what he was talking about. This was the first time I had heard Tom call my wife Anne. Why would my supervisor be calling my wife by her first name? And I remembered what Anne said. "Don't worry, you will eventually find out." Those words, and the sight of Tom smirking at me, I started to connect the dots in my head. "Impossible," I whispered. I looked over at Tom. He looked like he was trying to stifle a laugh. I dropped my briefcase. I wanted to grab at Tom, but I resisted the urge and balled up my fist. I knew it would be a bad thing to be rash with my hands. My heart was pounding so fast as a rapid alarm. My head felt like it was about to explode at any moment. There is no way I would be able to work with this guy. Feeling this way, I grabbed my bag that I had dropped and headed for my desk, away from Tom. While my computer was starting up, I discussed the situation with my director. The director listened to me wide-eyed. I could tell he was confused as to if he should believe me or not, but, well, if what you say is true, then you probably won't want to work with Tom. Why don't you try changing your work environment? He mumbled it quietly. Apparently, the director of the department didn't want any trouble. I reported the same information to HR, and then I wrote my resignation letter on my computer and requested to use all of the PTO I had left. When I submitted my resignation letter to the department head, he would formally retain me, but he said in a quiet voice, "Because it's you, I'm sure you will find another job quickly. I promise to not do anything that would damage your career or reputation." The director placed my resignation in his drawer. I put my belongings in a paper bag, and my worried coworker, Eddie, stood next to me. I asked Eddie to help clean up anything that I had left, and I left the company behind me. I have no regrets at all. If they are going to make a fool out of me to this extent, then I am determined to see it to the end. Yesterday, on my way home, I saw an advertisement for a lawyer's office and I called them to set up an appointment to discuss my case. What I learned after several meetings was that because I have very little proof, I don't have a strong case for my divorce. I also started looking for a new place to live. Anne took everything from the house, so I have nothing left. In the meantime, Anne has been moved out for a month. Anne has not contacted me at all. I would hope she would at least send me the divorce papers. I had no idea what she was thinking or planning. I put my phone away in my pocket, and as I was approaching the entrance of the lawyer's office, "You're David Bessex, right?" A young woman stopped in front of me. The woman seemed very gloomy. "I'm Tom's wife," and she lowered her head. I recalled that I went to a baseball game with my work department. At that time, I met Tom's wife. At that time, she seemed like a very cheerful person, but now she seems worn down. Undoubtedly, this change is a result of the affair between Tom and Anne. "Why were you looking for me?" "Actually, Maria, Tom's wife, has known about the affair for a little over a year, and she had someone conduct surveillance. And through that, she found out that I was Anne's husband. I have proof of the affair. Would you like to use the evidence with me when filing for your divorce?" Although she seems a bit worn out, Maria made her suggestion in a dignified manner. I didn't hesitate at all. "I look forward to working with you," I answered. The company didn't want to make a big deal of the situation, and Tom was allowed to continue working, and they accepted my resignation letter without comment. When I heard how the company handled the situation from Eddie, I had already figured that's how management would handle the situation, but it was still disappointing. While Marina and I were meeting at a cafe to exchange information, she said, "Your company's response just doesn't seem right. Change your working environment. Just seems like they were encouraging your resignation. And yet, he was having an affair with a subordinate's wife without any consequences." She seemed outraged by this, as much as if it had happened to her herself. After Marina and Tom were married, she underwent fertility treatment because they were having a difficult time conceiving a child. But during that, Tom had an affair with Anne, and Tom abandoned her as soon as Anne became pregnant. Tom had not realized that Maria had evidence of the affair, and he had started the divorce papers with a lot of enthusiasm. Apparently, Tom and Anne were just going to throw us away, and that was their plan. If that's the case, it makes sense why Tom confronted me the way he did on that day. Maria and I were both victims of Tom's and Anne's affair. As we spoke to each other about our situation and the two of our exes, we became closer. It had been about 2 months since Anne had moved out. At a mediation arrangement by our lawyers, Anne said, "Oh, are you guys licking each other's wounds?" She snickered at me, but I didn't really care. More than that, up until recently, I had treasured Anne. I was surprised to find that I had felt nothing but disgust towards her. We were supposed to be in love. I thought we understood each other so well. When did she turn into someone I couldn't understand anymore? Looking at Anne, who couldn't get remarried because our divorce wasn't finalized, made me feel appalled. As the discussion continued, Anne suddenly became hysterical. "Why would I have to pay you alimony? I'm about to give birth to a child. I'm going to need money." As she yelled, I thought, this is the real her? I was surprised. But when she thought of her child in her womb, she realized she needed to divorce me quickly. If she argued with me too much about the alimony payments, she realized that she would only be creating a disadvantage for herself. Reluctantly, she agreed to take the slightly higher alimony I proposed. "If you don't accept this, I will not sign the divorce paperwork." And this threat from me seemed to get through to her a bit. Anne signed the divorce documents with a bitter look on her face, as if she wanted to say, "This is the worst thing ever." A few days later, with both our divorce mediations having been completed, Maria and I met at a cafe to discuss how everything went. According to Maria, Todd's attitude was, "I don't care what it takes. Let's just finish this quickly." But he began to lose his temper when he saw the amount of alimony that was being requested. It didn't surprise me. I recall him losing his temper at the office and yelling at everyone before. I sighed as I remembered. Since we left everything to the lawyers, everything went fairly smoothly, and after 2.5 months since finding out about the affair, Marie and I have completed our divorces from our exes. Since I was getting very generous alimony, I felt that the situation was resolved in a satisfactory manner. When my former father-in-law called me to apologize, he told me that both Tom and Anne had turned to their families to ask for help in paying the alimony. "I don't remember raising someone who would have an extramarital affair," and their families turned them away. Turns out, Aya ended up using what little savings that she had, and she had to take out loans to make her alimony payments. And it seems like Tom's had a hard time with things too. And it seems that the attorney did not mail the certified mail with the legal documents to his home. Instead, they were sent to his office, and it became quite a big deal. In addition to that, the office also received from the lawyer information that the divorce was caused by his extramarital affair, and on top of that, my lawyer also notified them that I would be filing a grievance about how they convinced me into submitting a resignation letter with no good reason, and my company did a complete 180. "Please, don't file a grievance," they begged me during a phone call. I told them, "It's out of my hands. The lawyer is taking care of everything. Please contact him directly." And that was my response to them. I heard Tom, that was the root of all this mess, did get fired, but that has nothing to do with me anymore. On Maria's side, he said he had enough savings, so he would be making alimony payments. So it seems that it was not something she had to worry about. As for me, I started to like Maria. After all, we had gone through so much of the same things. Neither of us had family to lean on. We both had separated from the people we had married alone in the world. Our situations were very similar. My parents had passed away in an accident when I was in high school. Maria lost her mother from illness when she was little, and her father had passed away from an accident when she was in college. "Should we just date?" "You would be okay with that?" "Yes, I would be okay with it, if you're okay with it." "Of course, if you're okay with dating me. Please consider dating me, with possibility, the prospect of marriage in the future." "Definitely." Days later, I put in my notice at the apartment that I was living in. In order for Maria and me to start our new lives together, we began to look for a new apartment. I was enjoying my life where I didn't have to work. "If possible, I'd like to move to where my parents' graves are." And just as Maria wished, the two of us decided to move back to our hometown. Our previous place was in the city, but I kinda like this rural town where we can see the ocean. As we gazed out at the ocean from our balcony, Maria laughed happily. We didn't meet under good circumstances. The two of us will work hard to create our own happiness.